Hello, I'm Tom Francis, and I've been working on Gunpoint now for 3 years. So I'm very happy that it is now pretty much done. This video is going to be about why did it take 3 years? Why did it only cost $30 to make, which is related? Why have I never met most of the people working on it? And why did it go from being a free test game to something that we actually ended up selling? But first, I thought it might be interesting to go back to the very first version of Gunpoint I ever saved, over 1,000 versions ago, and back in 2010, and see how it compares to what I ended up making. Right, here we go. Yeah, this is an interesting level. I remember making this, so I just wanted like as many different like surfaces and spaces as possible. And back then it was all going to be just one room. So you can see like the jumping is... I don't want to say it's not far off the finished thing, because I like to think it got a little better than this, but it sort of has the same look to it in that you go into the Superman pose when you're going forwards. And that, I don't know why, but I was totally insistent on that. That was like, I was just sure that was the way it had to be. Like, you're a guy, you're standing up and you're tall and thin when you're standing, and then when you dive you're long and flat. And it's sort of realistic if you were throwing yourself forwards that fast, but it made collision a nightmare because the player's constantly changing shape, and so he can kind of clip into walls. And as you can see, it like, I mean, I hadn't really worked on it that much at this point, but almost every jump, your legs dig into the floor and then you can't move left or right. And you have to launch yourself back out again. And then if you jump like horizontally, you stop way sooner than you should do. I figured, oh yeah, I'll just fix that, it's just a few bugs. And it must have taken me 7 different total rewrites, the whole collision thing, to get it working. Partly because I didn't want to make it, Gunpoint isn't on like a grid. Most games, most platformers divide the world up into kind of big chunky blocks. And I didn't want to limit what I could do in levels early on, because I didn't really know what the levels would look like. So I never limited it to that. So you can have really thin things like panes of glass and thin wooden doors. But it means that the collision can't sort of like neatly snap you out to exactly where it wants you, which is much easier to do. You don't fall through the floor like that if you have a good grid system. So frankly I regret doing that. I wish I had stuck to just a big chunky grid. Yeah, so that wasn't even called Gunpoint, it was called Grey. That's the file name that I had of that version, because of the grey background, I think. I had no concept of what the game would be called or what it was about, except that there was kind of a PI type guy in there. And I think it was still my plan at that point that you would be secretly a robot. It started like the very first idea I had was I just wanted a game where you could fling yourself around with the mouse, like click somewhere and you fly in that direction, and that'd be governed by physics and there'd be no air control or anything. It would just sort of feel like, almost like throwing a ball around. I just had a sort of sense that might be fun. And my initial thoughts for how I could turn that into a game were basically like, well, maybe you could be like a robot with like a giant claw that you use to crush people's heads, and you can cling to the ceiling, which you can still do in the final game. But then I think you were floating around in space originally on my first like sketches of what this could be, and then I eventually decided like, you know, I love noir type themes, just like the superficial bits of them really. And so I thought, well, maybe they'd like, you could be a robot pretending to be a PI, and then you were a robot pretending to be a PI for quite a long time until I realised there's no actual reason for you to be secretly a robot. Like, there's no advantage in that. Nothing about what I want to do with the story or anything requires you to be secretly a robot. I just kind of thought it would be funny. And then there was actually like a problem with it, which as I started to get into, if you're going to be investigating cases and stuff, then I need to write stories, and I couldn't kind of, all the stories I wanted to write kind of concerned human affairs, and I couldn't think of a reason why this secret robot would care about the humans. And much later than it should have, it occurred to me that maybe he should just actually be a PI. And then eventually I kind of figured out, after I sort of had a better sense of what you'd be doing in the game, it made more sense to call you a spy than a PI, because you're really basically like a thief, a sort of data thief. So yeah, it was just me working on it back then. as I guess it probably showed in that prototype, that you can tell there was no artist working on that, and certainly no musicians. So all I was concentrating on back then was getting that jump working, which sort of, you know, roughly worked. It was relatively fun, although hideously glitchy back then, as you saw. And then the next thing was I wanted to be able to like climb on things and scale walls and climb on ceilings and stuff, and I added that shortly after. And at that point I sent it out as a test version to all of my 9 testers I had back then from announcing on my blog, and actually did like a round of feedback, and you got them all to tell me what they thought of the jumping, and there was no game at all, no objectives, no enemies, no challenge. I just wanted to know how the jump felt. Right, so this is the first version with enemies, and I think, yeah, it's had the jumping arc. Wow, this is quite far along. So I should be able to jump on a guy. Oh god! Oh yeah. People just turned around at like semi-random intervals. They're almost the same, but then there's like a little random variable to it. Oh yeah, good. I'll restart. So they start out in sync, and then they get more and more out of sync as the game goes on, which makes it more and more awkward to play. This was a hard game. And a really annoying one. Okay, so when this guy turns around, I'm going to bounce him. And that was the punching. I remember now, actually, this was the first time I tested the punching mechanic, and it had that, that noise in that animation, if you can call it an animation. That was the first time I had legitimate fun with Gunpoint. That was like, I genuinely enjoyed that. It wasn't just, you know, with the jumping mechanic, I could say, it feels nice. But with punching, genuinely laughing and having a good time the second I did that. So yeah, it doesn't scroll with you in this version. It's just everything's separate screens. I don't know why I thought that would ever have been a good idea. But yeah, all the climbing stuff is in there, so you can shimmy along a ceiling with that amazing animation. I can never get the wall climbing pose even remotely. Like, what's he doing? He's burying his face in the wall, and then his legs are just dangling. And then, was there an actual, almost a transition there? And yeah, so that's the transition that I had to add in response to testers. You can go from a ceiling to a wall. And jump off. Oh god! Jesus Christ, this game's really difficult. Ah, cool, it only sets you back a little way. So even back then I had a good autosave system. Yeah, when you're on a corpse you don't get any prediction dots for some reason. How are you supposed to... God, it's just impossible. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh god, it takes you further back each time. Oh, that's why I didn't use this autosave system. I was thinking recently, like, why didn't I use one where, you know, you just press R to go back a bit, and you press R twice to go back a bit further. And it's because, often when you load a save game, you get killed immediately, and then you don't want to get set back even further. You want to go back to, you know, just the one you just loaded, which is only like 1 or less seconds ago. So, I don't know what the point of this, like, this could never have been fun, really, could it? Apart from the punching. But I mean, that turning around thing is just horrible. But I mean, that was never the plan. I was always going to add AI. But I just wanted to be able to test combat before I added AI. You know, the thing that strikes me is, like, jumping around like this is, as soon as you got the prediction dots, is really nice. There's no charge up time in this at all. It's just purely precision based, which is okay, but it means it makes you a bit powerful. You can, you know, launch yourself immediately at an enemy. And in this version, the enemies instantly kill you, so that didn't help. But after I added like a little bit of a delay, so enemies had to prime their weapon before they could fire, which, by the way, was a result of the feedback on this version, because everyone was annoyed at how instantly they died. Once I added that, being able to jump instantaneously at full strength was too powerful. And I still let you do it in the final version of Gunpoint once you've upgraded your jump time, but you have to really earn it. Yeah, it's funny that the jump prediction thing is, oh god, is nice, makes a big difference, but the thing I really miss playing this, the one thing that, even more than the hideous graphics, is oh god, is that you don't slide when you land from a jump. So I'm going to jump back over here so I can show you. Like, no matter how fast you're going, you don't do any slide at all. You just stop immediately. That's horrible. I can't stand that. Come on, Tom Francis. That's the worst possible situation you could put the player in. How am I supposed to know whether he's facing that way or not? That's just... I don't even know. I don't think he even turns around if he's not on screen, so I might just be boned unless I jump up here. Yeah. This is the worst bit of gameplay I've ever made in anything, because you can't jump fast enough. I remember the testers all hated that, and I kind of knew they would. Like, I knew that was horrible. I knew it was, but I didn't have any other way of adding difficulty. So I was just like, okay, well, once you're done with this 3-room test version, I'll give you just one thing that's a little bit tricky to do. And the problem there was that rather than being tricky, it was simply shit. So the main thing missing from the build you just saw is obviously crosslink mode, the rewiring gadget. And that wasn't in there, I think, because I hadn't even thought of it yet. It wasn't in the original plan for the game. I had no idea how hacking would work, but I did know I wanted it in there. And I wanted it in there because I love Deus Ex, and I love the hacking in Deus Ex, and I love it in System Shock 2 as well, and in Bioshock, and any game where you can subvert the environment to work for you, I get a really big kick out of that. I love tinkering and, you know, being cunning and devious. But I did think that what I was trying to do was I was trying to sort of pick that out, the thing that I liked, and make it more universal and give the player a bit more power and freedom, and think of the kind of simplest form of it that would also lead to a lot of different possibilities. And I used to do a bit of level design, so I've made levels for Doom, for Duke Nukem 3D, for Blood, and for Quake 2. And not to any great success, but I always tinkered around. And one of the things I loved doing that was when you make functional elements of a level, like a switch and a door, you make the switch and you make the door, and then you have to tell the game that this switch should open this door. And the way you do that is you give them both like a unique code that tells them to talk to each other. And I liked fiddling around with that. I liked saying, actually, I want this switch to open those 2 doors, or I want this switch to open that, and then that to open that. So you can mess around with just the kind of logic of it. And I think that's part of why, as I was trying to think of a good hacking system, that just sprung into my head. Like, what if you just gave a player the power that the level designer usually has? Because apart from anything, I'm going to have to do that when I make levels. Like, I'm going to have to tell them, you know, when the guard presses this switch, that door should open, and I need a way of doing that. And since that's a really fun thing to do, that could just be hacking. Like, you just let the player decide how the level is connected up, and then rather than this sort of binary hacking method where you flip something to your side, like you flip a turret to your side or whatever, you would have a more elaborate and sort of logical way of doing it. So rather than just flicking a door to open, you would flick the switch that's supposed to open it to the switch on the other side, so that when the guard tries to open it to get through, he opens it into his own face and knocks himself out. That wasn't part of my original plan, but that turned out to be a really easy consequence of the system. I think the reason I wasn't totally happy with the kind of Deus Ex method of hacking, I'm incredibly happy with it, I love it, but the reason I thought I might be able to do something more sophisticated, or in some way simpler, was that it always kind of bothered me that it was so binary. Like, it's just, when you hack a turret in Deus Ex, you go into the software and there's literally like an option for shoot enemies or shoot allies. That's built into the software of the turret. Why did the programmers put that there? Like, I know programmers like to be rigorous, but are they that thorough? Like, we don't want to make any assumptions about what the user wants. We think, I mean, part of the brief is the turret's supposed to shoot enemies, but let's not assume the user will never want it to shoot their own friends. They might want it to kill them and everyone they've ever loved. So we just put that in as an option in case they want it. So after I'd put it in, crosslink, I was, after I released like the first trailer of it, which will be of the build you're about to see, lots of people wanted to write about the game, which was great, and I did a few interviews with different people, and I was doing like 3 email interviews at once, and all 3 of them asked me where I got the idea for the crosslink. And so the first one I said it was from Deus Ex, and I was trying to give a more universal version of that. The second one I said it was from level design, and I was wiring things up like that. And the third one was like, I don't want to just repeat my answer. So even if there's a true answer, I'm just going to change my answer every time. And I was trying to think, like, I feel like I've seen it somewhere before,
And I remembered when I was a kid, my dad, who's an electrical engineer, got me an electronics kit. Not electronics kit, I don't know what that would be. Which was just a big circuit board and a bunch of inputs and outputs. So things like a microphone, a light sensor, a push button, a switch you can flick, and then a buzzer, a light, and a relay that you could use to chain things together. You just had a bunch of wires, and you could connect any of these two things together by plugging in a wire to one and plugging it into the other. And then you could use the relay to chain them together, so you could have make the switch activate the buzzer, and then the buzzer activate the light. Since I remembered that, I was like, oh god, that's my game. That's all I did. I just copied that. So it's actually a little bit embarrassing. I mentioned earlier that Gunpoint only cost $30 to make. In terms of the actual development budget, I did spend money on other things, but to actually make it only cost $30. And that was for Game Maker itself. I had to buy the software. There's a free version, but you need the commercial one to do anything more complicated. And the reason it didn't cost any more than that is I didn't quit my job, so I was earning a salary the whole time, which was great, but it was also the reason it took 3 years. Like if a full-time developer showed you Gunpoint and told them it took them 3 years, I think you'd ask, like, what happened? Like, what went wrong? Even if you like it, like, it's kind of puzzling that would take 3 years. But yeah, it's just because I was only working on weekends and not even all of those. So that was because I had no idea if I could even make a game at all. And I was only doing it really because I wanted to get a job as a game developer, ideally Valve. Like, that was the dream scenario, I'd get a job at Valve. And the only thing stopping me from getting a job at Valve was that I had no applicable skills, talent, or experience. So I needed to make something to just find out whether I did, just to make that first step. And I couldn't quit my job to do that because I had no idea if I was going to be remotely any good at it at all. I might be a total dismal failure. And I was pretty prepared for that possibility. But once I put the crosslink in and I had it working and I was playing around with myself, I started to have a sense that, like, okay, I can make a game I like. I'm really enjoying playing this. So that's a strong sign. And then the thing I'll show you next is the build I sent to testers, the first one with the crosslink in it. And when I got the feedback from that and heard about the crazy things they were trying with the crosslink mode and how much they liked it, that was when I started thinking about actually be onto something.
Right, so this is prototype 4, and I had these little question marks to hover over and to find out tips about how to play the game that nobody understood. It was a complete waste of time. For ages, people didn't know that you could put your mouse over them, so they try and walk into them, and that didn't do anything, I think. Oh no, that does do something. But then if your mouse is over something else, it'll override it, so that was just baffling. But I've got acceleration in, and there's a gradient in the background. I wonder what happens if you fail the first jump. Not very much. Yeah, so I had a little swoosh in there. And breakable glass. That's when the game's really coming together. And even kind of an animation. So this was like the big kind of step between the previous version and this one was I needed to have all the doors and lights and things put in before I could make the crosslink, because the crosslink itself was a very easy bit of code, but it needed some actual things to link between. So I had to get a lot of different systems working before I could start on that one. And this was the first version with the wet slap punch noise, and also the messages if you keep punching somebody. As you can see, that hasn't changed much. And you can pick up people's guns in this version. Can you use them? No. Oh wait, that's interesting. You can pick them up, you can't do anything with them at the moment. So you're going to find out whether I can complete my own puzzles, because it's been so long since I made this that I genuinely can't remember how to solve any of the puzzles I made here. But turning off the light seems like a good idea. And then, oh yeah, okay, so that got him there. That pose still cracks me up. And then we can do the same here. Hey, this level is almost in the final version actually, where you turn the light off to trick someone into coming out of a door. Awkward. Yeah, the lack of a slide is still driving me crazy. And that Windows noise when you hack a computer, people hated that because everyone thought they were like there'd been some kind of error in the background and people would all tab out to find out what had gone wrong. And this would be the level where they teach you how to use the crosslink. Oh my god, it's so green! My god, I forgot it ever looked like this. This was in the olden days. Although I did, even back then I had little current flowing down the wire. You can't see it very well, but there is a way of telling which way a connection is going already. You have to right click in this version to jump, and that's really weird. So you can see the things you wirejack, the circuit boxes, they were in there right from the start as well. Oh, this is good. Huh. Okay, yeah. So this is a good puzzle, which I can't do in the final version of Gunpoint. So I can't wire the switch to that door because it's on a different circuit, but I can wire his switch to that door, and then turn the lights off so that he presses it, which is great, and that's like the whole essence of crosslink is trying to use it to trick people. But I stopped myself from doing that because it means that lights on the same floor are on different circuits, which didn't make any sense to me because each one controls all the lights, so they would have to be on the same circuit in order for the electronics of that to work out. But it did, making that make more electronical sense limited the puzzles a bit. It meant I couldn't do that exact puzzle anyway. And also, guards would try and get out of dark floors, so I'm going to turn his light off, and then when he hits the light switch, he's going to open the door for me. Oh god! Oh god! So again, he couldn't turn the lights back on, so he left. And I think I got rid of that just because it made it really easy to clear floors. You just turn off all the lights and then everyone gets out of your way and then you can just carry on. Oh my god. Man, it was harder to jump on people in this version. The acceleration on your jump, on your walking is really annoying. I'm glad I didn't stick with that. I think there's a little bit in the final game, but that feeling of slidiness is so irritating. Right, so now I've tapped into the red circuit. Excellent. Now I've got two guards on the ground floor. I can turn their lights off easily. I don't know what the point of that camera is really, that seems pretty easy to avoid. And then... so the red guy pushes the switch. So that's good, I can get him to open his door. And he goes out. He doesn't try the other light switch. Oh my god, oh shit! I didn't know that would happen. So he comes to this floor and then he tries to turn the lights back on this floor and fails then. And then he just gives up. At that point he's like, he's had enough, he's not gonna... He knows he'll never be in the light ever again. Alright. Job done. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way I could have kept that thing of having different coloured circuits on the same floor for the lights. Because it is really nice to be able to trick someone who's pressing a light switch that you wouldn't be able to press. Right. So, we want to get in there, but we can't. Because we just take the lift. Oh, but we don't want the camera to go off. I want the alarm to go off, sorry. It took me so long to get lifts working. And it would have taken me so much less time if I had just realised that that silhouette you get as you move between floors is totally unnecessary and it offers, like, you know, doesn't help in any way. You don't need to know exactly where the lift is, you know where you're going. But getting that to move correctly was an absolute nightmare, and I never once questioned why I was doing it. And so after, like, I think it took me 4 days to get lifts working, And then at the end of it, when I realised, hang on, if I just took out that silhouette, I could have just had it on a timer. So you press the switch, and then 3 seconds later, you just teleport to the next floor, and that would have been infinitely easier to code. So that taught me the lesson that you should always question what you're working on. Particularly when it's starting to take a long time, if it takes more than half a day, you should start thinking, hang on, do I actually really need this? Right, so now, where am I trying to get to? That's a vault door. But what circuits are on? I guess, yeah, this was the problem with this version. If something's not wired to anything, there's no way to tell what circuit it's on. So it's on the red circuit. Oh, okay, yeah, okay, I didn't read behind tooltip. The vault doors are always on the gold circuit because they're gold. Which was, I think, my crude way around the fact that I had no way to indicate what circuit things are on. So now I want to... I think I will set off this alarm. That works in all versions of Gunpoint. Now I want to turn that guy's light off if I can, but maybe I can just lure him down here by breaking the glass. I can! I'm great at this game. It's fun because I don't entirely know the rules because I change the rules so often. This is actually quite a nice little level. I had to really think about it, and even though it's quite small. Oh wait, how do I do this? Ah, the lift can activate the door. Right. I probably hadn't taught people that. Although I do teach people one thing in this version which I don't teach them in the final thing, which is that when you're in a lift, you can click on another floor to go there. So if you want to skip floors in between you and them, between here and there, then you just use the mouse. But I never explained that in the final version because it was too complicated to explain 2 different control methods for the same thing. So you can see from that prototype it was kind of coming together. You could get an idea of what the game was actually like, what it was about, and how the crosslink worked. And so I put out a video of that version where just me playing it for 8 minutes, really badly recorded, couldn't really hear what I was saying over the game sound because I didn't have a way of recording them 2 separately. And I asked in that video if there was an artist out there who wanted to help out, because I could kind of tell the art was a weak point, to put it kindly. And it got an amazing response, and people sent in samples of what they, how they would do it, and the characters and the backgrounds. And there were 2 in particular that were just like, as soon as I saw them, I just thought, oh god, I really want to play that game. So John Roberts did a character of a guy in a trench coat, not really a spy like Conway, but sort of cyborg with a glowing blue eye that would scan back and forth, and he'd kind of walk along and then look around with his pistol up, and something about the way he moves and the kind of the realistic proportions, but stylized, but looking. Nothing's exaggerated about it. It's the right proportions, just in a kind of the sort of fantasy, I guess, texture to it, and immediately just sort of conjured this really convincing, interesting world just from that one little sprite. And so even though that was a sprite that wouldn't fit in Gunpoint at all, because there are no cyborgs in Gunpoint, I was really keen to use John if I possibly could. And so he did some mock-ups of things more suited to the game, like the guards that you see in there. And the other one was the cityscape done by Fabian Van Dommelen. He did a character too, but it was the city behind the character that as soon as I saw it, I was just like, oh my god, that just looks so perfect for what I had in mind. It's pouring with rain, it's dark, it's futuristic, but not sort of crazy sci-fi, just there's something a little bit unusual and conceptual about the buildings that was felt really right. So those 2, I was kind of amazed anyone responded to this at all, because I wasn't even offering any money. It was going to be a free game at that point, so I had no money to offer anyone. So everyone who volunteered samples were doing it on the basis that they wouldn't get anything out of it really, except for just contributing to something that they obviously thought was interesting. And that's a great way to do things, by the way. Even if you think you might charge for something, start out saying it's going to be free, so that everyone who joins you isn't in it for the money, because that means now that we are selling it and everyone's going to get a percentage, that's great, and we've made sure that's fair. But
it's good to know that their enthusiasm for the project is not based on the payoff. You know, it's not going to be if the game doesn't sell very well for some reason. You know, I won't feel like I've ripped them all off or anything because they all came on board knowing, thinking that they would be doing it for free. So once I had all that awesome art coming in from John and Fabian, that was great, but we couldn't really reconcile it with the current scale of the game. Just like the size of the buildings was very small. Your character was very few pixels, and John wanted more detail and wanted to make it bigger. We kind of went back and forth. He wanted to do really tall ones, and I said like a bit smaller than that, and then we settled on a final size. But it was still a size that meant there was really no point in trying to adapt the levels I had to that new scale, because it would mean moving every single object in every single level, and that's takes as long as just making a new set of levels. And I wasn't like married to those particular ones, and a lot of them didn't make any physical sense. They were just sort of, they were more abstract than I wanted the final game to be. So I just started again, just, you know, did all the levels from scratch, and sort of worked out what the story would be at that point, even though there wasn't any story in it. But I just wanted to make sure the levels would match up to what the story is telling you you're going to do, and just had a sort of rough plan for what your objectives would be, and that took quite a lot of work actually. I think it was only about 2 or 3 months in terms of time, but I think I was working pretty intensively on that because I was really excited about, you know, getting new art, making it look like a real game. But I remember it being quite grueling because, you know, fundamental things had to change. Like cross-link mode, as you saw in that last prototype, it used to be a horrible green overlay, and John wanted to give it its own art style, which meant having an alternate asset for every single bit of decoration, every wall, every floor, every guard, well, not guards, but the guards just go dark. But yeah, everything else needed to have its own special sprite, and I needed to have a way of switching in between those two really quickly. But by the time we finished it, I think it was worth it. Like suddenly, my reason for getting artists was I thought, I felt like the design in that last prototype was good and the art was bad. I didn't know for sure the design was good. I didn't know if it would really cut it in a real game, that, you know, one you could actually sell. I was still a little bit doubting myself on that, but I had enough confidence in it to think, let's see if we can get some good art, and then once we have, we'll know whether this feels like a real game. And yeah, as soon as it looked good, it was suddenly like, yes, every part of this measures up now. This actually starts to feel like a serious thing.
Right. Wow, the art makes a bit of a difference, isn't it? So this isn't the latest. It's there's no parallaxing, and this is the old city background. But you can tell it already looks quite a lot like the final thing. God, it's so nice to have animations. It really changes the feel of everything. It's just so much. It's just more fun to move around. And yeah, the slide is in. The slide is the best thing. So I won't stop and read all this tutorial stuff because you probably know it all. And I certainly do. Breakable glass. The best kind of glass. So I won't play a huge amount of this because, to be honest, it's all rather familiar to me. I don't have to think too far back to remember when the game was like this, because it was like this not that long ago. Like this level, the only difference is there's a guard on the lower floor now, and there's animations for hacking, and jump charge works a bit differently. But basically, by this point, I have the game. Actually, I can't remember this level very well because I have totally changed this one. Then you have to jump out the window to get back in. That's weird. And the classic, turn the lights off to get the guard out. That's a cool bug. I haven't seen that one before. I probably have back in the day. Why didn't I keep it? It's brilliant. It makes Conway look like he's just trying to keep fit. Cool, and then, so this is the last thing I'll show you, which is what crosslink mode turned into. In fact, this is a bit different to how it ended up, because we've got this, that nice little interlacey effect you see on it, where it's a bit stripy, and it's also darker around the edges as you pan around. Both really cool things that John was very excited about and did very well, but they slow the game down like crazy. so I had to take them out in the end. But I still think Crossing Road just looks great anyway because of the, you know, all the blue stuff, which took ages. So yeah, not too far from that is where we ended up. So once we had the game looking like that, I made a new video of that version, basically to show off, hey, look at my artists, aren't they cool? And that trailer was, I think it was even longer than the first one. I think the first one was like 7 minutes, no, the first one was 5 minutes, and this one was like 8 minutes of just me talking over it, no editing, no kind of, nothing fancy, all completely in game. And I've got this drony, mumbly voice. I don't know if you noticed. But despite all that, it suddenly just really took off. Suddenly, like every gaming blog was reporting on it. The trailer got more than 250,000 views in fairly short order. And Total Biscuit got in touch to cover it. And then his video of that got like 350,000 views, even more than my trailer. And then around that time, we entered the IGF with that same build. Mostly I just wanted feedback. I wanted to get like real serious game designers and journalists to play my game and tell me what's wrong with it, basically, because you get feedback at the end of it, regardless of whether you become a finalist or not. And that was, if I'd actually known how the IGF worked, I probably wouldn't have entered, because it turns out you don't get the feedback till after, not only like after the judging process ends, but after the winners have been announced at the IGF Awards the next year. So it's like more than 9 months between submitting your game and actually getting any feedback on it. But at which point the feedback's completely useless because the game's changed radically. So don't enter the IGF for feedback, but do enter the IGF anyway, because incredibly we became a finalist for design. We didn't win, of course, because Spelunky was nominated in the same category, so of course Spelunky won, and richly deserved to. But that was incredible. That was, you know, suddenly it felt like everything was kicking off. You know, it was getting covered, it was getting loads of views, and I was going to an award ceremony to be to lose an award to one of my game design heroes, basically. You know, where Spelunky was the thing that inspired me to start making a game in the first place. It was, you know, Spelunky was really good and made in Game Maker, and I thought, Game Maker sounds like a thing I could use, you know, makes games, right? So that was, as it was kind of getting more serious, the number of people telling me I should charge money for it was getting more and more. My friend Graham had always been telling me I should do that, and I was like, no, I just need to get my name out there, you know, because I want to get a job at game developer, so I just want this to get the widest possible audience, and then that will increase my chances of you know, people hearing me and there being a way for me to actually work for a company doing game design. And so I eventually, like, so many people had asked, I was starting to think, okay, you might be right, but I've already said it's going to be free, so I felt like it'd be betraying, you know, everyone to suddenly announce I was going to charge for it after having promised it for free. So the only like fair way to do this is just ask publicly on the blog, like, should I charge for it? Like, if you guys think I should, then I will. But you know, if you're gonna feel betrayed because I said it was going to be free and it's not, then I won't. And I got over 1,000 comments on that post, and less than 1% said it should be free, which is just what? Like, I thought it might be a 99% 1% split, but I thought it'd be the other way around. You know, people want free things, right? That just seemed obvious to me, that people would, you know, give people the option, hey, I've got this thing here that you guys seem to like, do you want it for free or do you want to pay for it? 99% wanted to pay for it, which is just, I never quite got over that. But that was a pretty clear signal. Okay, I'm just going to charge for it. There's no more ethical dilemma. That solved that, which is fantastic. Not just for me, but for all the people who put all this amazing work into it. You know, the art was so beautiful by that stage, and John and Fabian put this work into it, and we'd also hired musicians, because when I put out that trailer with the art, I asked for if anyone wanted to help with the music. I had amazing samples for that, and we brought 3 different musicians on board to do that, and it was awesome to think that I could actually, you know, they might get some money for it. So that onslaught of, oh, people like this, oh, people want to pay money for it, oh, I'm at an awards ceremony. It took me a while, but I started to realise that I've shot way past just getting a job. Like, I don't want to work for anyone else now. I kind of like being in control. Not because I'm always right, but because if you're in total control, then
if I'm wrong, I always find out. I'm going to find out for sure that I'm wrong. And anytime you're not in control, some of your decisions get overruled. So no matter how well or badly it goes, you never find out if your way would have worked. I'm just finding I care about every part of making a game, from coding to designing it to releasing and even promoting it. I want it all done a particular way. And pretty much since I started on Gunpoint, that became viable. Like, that's a thing people can do now. You don't need money or publishers or even experience, just time and a cheap tool. So if you have ever wanted to make a game, I'm not going to tell you it's easy, I'm not going to say you definitely can, and I'm not going to say even you definitely should, but you should definitely try. Because I put it off for about 5 years because I just assumed it wasn't possible. And it wasn't until I played Spelunky that I started thinking it could be. And Derek Yu doesn't make it look easy, he just kind of shows what you can do with time and a cheap tool. So one of the reasons I wanted to make this video was to demystify as much of Gunpoint's development as I possibly can, to show how doable it is. I didn't quit my job. I turned down every offer from a publisher on a platform who wanted any kind of control over development or any kind of exclusivity, and I didn't go crazy doing it, I think. So it won't be for everyone, but don't be an idiot like me and leave it for 5 years before you even try. If you bought this, thank you so much for supporting it. It's a huge deal to me, and I promise that if it's economically viable at all, I'll quit my job to make more things for you. Cheers.